There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay? We're all good?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, this is my first time hitting the go live button, and I feel so accomplished.
You did it. You did it.
I, I did it. I didn't screw it up. Well, I'm happy to be here with you. This really, like, selfishly, Nikki, it gives me a chance to have a really cool conversation with you every week. And so I'm grateful that we get to do these conscious conversations. And literally from anywhere, I am in my hotel room. I've got a leadership like kind of keynote that I'm giving this morning. And so I'm trying to put on my makeup and do some packing. And so I apologize if anybody hears some clinging around. But that's the nice thing, right? We can do it from wherever we are in the world.
Yes. That's how we set this up. It's like no matter what you're doing, make it part of your routine and nothing will hold you back doing your makeup, driving, whatever. So you're modeling the way, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody joining us too. Like, just what are you doing this morning? How are you passing your time while you're listening to conscious conversations?
Yeah.
I think it's good to kind of see where we are in the world. All right, so topic today is really radical responsibility. So owning our part in any relationship. And I know every week we touch on this, right? Because it's such a big part of conscious habit and being conscious is ownership. Ownership is part of the framework that we teach at Conscious Habit. And as we were putting this talk together, I was really reflecting on some of the most recent Meditate on This episodes that are about conscious parenting and conscious relationships. And I am no expert in like those areas in particular, but us being conscious and owning and reflecting the lessons that come to us through the difficulty of various relationships is definitely, something I'm excited to talk about. So, and I think if our listeners consider like what are the various relationships you have in your life. For you, Nikki, what are some of the top ones that come to mind for you of relationships in your life?
Hmm. Okay. Well, I was sitting here prior thinking about the challenging ones first.
Uh-huh.
I should start with I have friendships, I've got my marriage, I have my team members, business contacts, my family, lots of different scenarios that I've thought through. One that, from a radical responsibility, and I think where you're going with this, even when it's hard, I want to be my best self. My
Mm-hmm.
stepmom hat, I would say, is one that I've struggled through. There's a lot of things that have gotten better over time, but definitely that angle of relationship is one to dig into today that I could give some examples.
Yeah. So the framework today, Nikki and I were texting back and forth, and I'm like, throw some scenarios out, and then let's just talk about how would we consciously handle these because Ram Dass, I love the quote. It's like, oh, you think you're enlightened? Go spend a weekend with your family.
Yeah.
And truly, our relationships are what make life so special and meaningful and joyful. And, being able to just share life with people that we love and create memories. And it's also what makes our life painful. It really is like, it can be hard and challenging, but if we keep in mind that the world is our mirror and every relationship is teaching us something we believe to be true about ourselves, then we can continue our conscious journey no matter what. That doesn't mean we never create boundaries, but I think it means we're owning what we can with the experience we're having. So, all
Yeah.
right, you ready to go? Where you
Yeah.
want to start?
Well, one question. So this was one of the topics that you put on the docket for us, and
Mm-hmm.
you're saying radical responsibility. Where does that come from, first of all?
So, by the way, I want to just kind of reiterate if you've ever joined us before that, like, we talk about how sometimes consciousness doesn't happen in the moment, it happens in reflection. So, radical responsibility could happen in the moment if we are conscious enough to catch it. And that is our ability to be like, ooh, how do I slow myself down? How do I want to respond? As we've talked about creating space between reaction and response. How do we own what we're doing and feeling and how we spoke, and rather than the other option is, and that can happen during or after in reflection, the other option is it's purely on them, that they are 100% responsible for how you're feeling right now, how you're responding right now. And it's important that we take ourselves kind of aside and are like, how am I responding? What is that pushing in me? So radical responsibility is fully owning how we think, feel, and respond in any given situation.
Oh man, I have the model of this in my life. My husband is, I admire him so much. I could actually kick off with a really challenging weekend situation that I think will be fun for this. And just watching how he did, I just kept telling him, you handle this situation like a champ every single time. And it tears his heart. I mean, I can just see him on the verge of tears, but how he shows up is just like, it's all, I'm just in awe. So ever since, a little bit about David and I, my background as a family hobby, we did boating, like lakes and boating. That was our jam. David had never done that. He's actually pretty scared of the water and has been getting over this fear. But now we have a boat and we're doing the lake thing. And last year was our first year that he got to see fireworks, 4th of July on the water. Like, oh my gosh. And Amy, you know this, we've talked about it. It's a really cool thing. And last year we had some friends out and he said, all I want is for the boys to be here and make this a annual tradition. That this is so cool. I want to share this with them. So since last year, he has at least 20 times planted a seed about this. We're going to be together on 4th of July. You guys are going to love this. It'll be our regular thing. Even up until last week, one of them had a birthday. We had a birthday gathering. And again, David's locking it in. He's like, you guys are going to love this. Da, da, da. Well, we have some dynamics on the other side, as anyone might know, with, step parenting and co-parenting stuff that typically gets in the way. And guess what happened? On the day of 4th of July in the morning, there was a message, we're not coming.
Oh.
And I could hear it, like the phone rang and one of the boys called, and there is some drama that happens and control that happens on the other side. And all of a sudden they have this major family thing going on and, the boys can't come. And, one of the boys called to tell David this, and I heard him listen and I heard him say, all right, well, I'm really disappointed. I love you, buddy. I'll talk to you later. I'm like, wow, and then that was, he was really hurt by it and all that, but just how he showed up, he said, I will never let anything take away from who I want to be as a dad. I always want to be grounded and I will love you no matter what. He's like, I wanted to call some names and, rattle off how their mom is controlling them and whatever, but he showed up in that he was crushed and still, stood up as the dad he wanted to be. I'm like, dang. So
that's awesome. I love that. And in that reflection, I think what happens when you're able to be that in such a hurtful situation is he chose the bigger picture, meaning his relationship in the long run with his boys is more important than that disappointment, even though it's really disappointing. And I'm like, good for him for voicing that, because I do think that we've got to be our greatest advocate, but we can do it in a loving, kind manner, not from Cartman's drama triangle, which is like, this is BS and you guys, and you knew, and I've been planning this for a year. Like that is, he kept his ego out of it. And ego, as we've talked about, if you've joined us in previous conversations, it really gets triggered when we feel we need to protect ourselves. And it doesn't come out in the kindest, most loving way. It's purely like, I'm right, you're wrong. You need to know you're wrong. And so it's, I love that he chose the bigger picture, which is like, a loving relationship with my kids is going to be important forever and always. And this moment is a temporary disappointment. It's really cool.
Yeah. And tonight,
and it sucks.
One of the ways to be able to break it down. And he's like, I want to go to dinner. I want to talk through this. And just like, wow, just the healthy road that he chooses every single time. And I watch him get hurt over and over by this very controlling ego side of their life. But he stays true. And even though he's hurting, he stays true to who he is. So he doesn't look back and say, I'm not being who I want to be as a dad. And dang, that is hard, but so rewarding, I bet. For him, I watch it, I'm just in awe. So
good for David. I like that there's the stoicism principle, which is the best revenge is to not be like them.
Yeah.
And I think that makes us be able to be happy and proud of how we showed up. So very cool. What else comes to mind for you? Some other relationships that, situations or just specific relationships that can be challenging to own our part.
Yeah. Well, let's flip over and do a different area of life. Let's say in work, dealing with a challenging client who wants to point the blame. And let's just say, actually, David and I were talking through a scenario recently about business, and we'll go here that, this person committed to a coaching program. It's a once a month, 4-hour commitment, kind of like a peer group, leadership coaching experience. And the person had not shown up for 2 months. The days didn't work or whatever. There was a conflict. Comes to David and saying they're just not seeing ROI on the investment. Now, the 4-hour thing is only one component of the program, but turning the tables and asking questions out of curiosity or helping that person, in Amy's words, own their shit, right? But let's talk about why this isn't working. And, to summarize the conversation, that person through the depth of the conversation realized on their own, I'm not putting the work in. Right. So, that doesn't always go as easy as that, where you can ask these questions and then someone's like, you know what, this is really on me. I need to give it a few more months. There's sometimes where it's just a bunch of excuses. And no matter if you're the person listening, you don't have to own those excuses. You can keep those, keep that line there, but it comes up a lot, right? In challenging client scenarios, it's your fault. This is working. And I love at People Forward Network, one of the things we say with our clients is we're in partnership. Yes, we're in marketing and sales and things like that, and things don't always go as planned. And so how do we own that together? But what are your thoughts there, Amy, on challenging scenarios?
Well, 2 things come to mind. Number one, if you find yourself in that situation, and really this applies for any kind of relationship, that if we think about the goal is to help them keep their guard down so they're willing to understand and they're willing to help them become get to self-discovery. So if you are trying to influence radical ownership, the do's and don'ts, okay? So let's start with the don'ts. The don'ts what we don't want to do is do anything that sounds like it's pointing the finger. Any language that could be finger pointing language, like you aren't showing up, you aren't doing the work, you're the one. When we do that, what we do is invite defense, and we cannot be accepting and defensive at the same time. It just doesn't happen. So a do would be provide social proof. Social proof is this concept where you maybe share a story about somebody who had a similar experience and say, I hear where you're coming from, and I can completely see why you might experience that, right? So there's some validation in the beginning. And say, there's someone that we've experienced that had the same thing, and here was kind of his. So you can do social proof where you tell the story of someone else and see if that invites them to see themselves in that person. The other thing you can do, to your point, is go into curiosity. You cannot be judgmental and curious at the same time. So it allows you to be like, hey, tell me more about that. Where do you think that comes from? Let's talk about where you have attended. What did that look like for you? And, hey, I happen to notice there's been a few you've missed. Help me understand. And so it's just, maybe you point it out, but you're doing it through curiosity. So really stay away from shoulding, pointing, that type. It will just create defensiveness, and then each person's trying to prove they're right. The next thing I would recommend is, in hindsight, after it's done, to go back and there's a really good reflection of, hey, does this help me shift how we onboard people? or maybe the agreements that are made, or maybe how we discuss that ROI is both time and money. Like, what's the gift of this, of his misaligned expectations?
Mhm.
And, because that could feed into some various language or reminders or part of coaching or whatever it might look like. So I think, when the customer is wrong, there's often a like, but why? Like, what did they expect that maybe we didn't align? And you know what? Sometimes people we could set expectations all day long. It could be in writing. We could have it in conversations. People tend to only remember things the moment it's important to them. So, there's times we can gently bring that back up as well and just say, hey, remember when we were sitting down having this conversation and we talked about how ROI is time and money? Let's dig into that a little bit. And then you have something to hold them accountable to once the conversation's been had.
Mm-hmm. You were bringing me back to my counseling days in something you said around the you statements versus the I statements. That shows up in any relationship where the minute we say you, it's like blame or accusation or triggers of defensiveness, right? Versus the I shifts it to ownership, our experience. People can't argue with how I feel. So always a good one to remember in, any of these. I was just kind of thinking through, like, let's say someone missed an expectation or a deliverable, and I said, you didn't follow through, versus I was expecting this to be done, and now I feel stuck today because it's not done. How can we solve this? Such a different way.
Yes. And I think that takes practice and it takes planning too. Like, so if you're going into a challenging situation, to not that you have to script it, but to just be like, okay, how can I present this in a way that isn't, doesn't create defensiveness, that isn't Cartman drama triangle, which is like, I sound persecutor and now they play victim, or, whatever. And just so we have a good plan, because in the heat of the moment, it's very easy for us to move into that reactionary kind of ego driven, I need you to see, you're wrong or that I'm hurt or whatever, in the moment. So planning is super helpful.
Amy, how you share many times you're triggering that comes from bad drivers. Let's go in that arena of, you're just out in the community doing something, you're in a long line at a concert, it's so hot, and these people come up, you've been standing in line for 45 minutes, you're almost at the ticket check-in, and they cut right in front of you, right? Those kinds of scenarios where they're not like our friend or our mom or our son or whatever, let's talk through that, because they come up a lot, just these random things that are people that we don't really know. And how do we show up? And it's not like I'm like, I feel hurt because I've been standing in line, and let's talk through how that shows up.
I think this is good, because this happens in the wild all the time. And I will say that my husband's a great teacher for me on this, because he is very much like, it's not a big deal. It's fine. Like, don't let that get to you. Because, it can hook my ego for sure, because my ego is very impatient. And so it's a good radical ownership is recognizing, I think, what are the scenarios that do get you going, right? Where you are just ready to flip it, or whatever yours is, right? In fight or flight, I'm more fight. Some people are flight. Some people are, I think it's helpful for us to know that. Some things that work for me is I try to utter the phrase. This is a phrase kind of from, it's from A Course in Miracles and one of the lessons in the student workbook. And there's a phrase that says, it's a practice where you look around the room, and whatever you look at, like right now I'm looking at a hairbrush, and you utter, I don't know anything about that. And this is what I try to practice with people. Like, I don't know anything about them. I don't know about their life. I don't know what they're experiencing right now. There's so much I don't know. And it's very easy for us to go quickly to a story, which is like, they're rude, they're inconsiderate, they don't care, and so to interrupt the story, I use that phrase, I don't know anything about. And I think it's like we said before, the best revenge is to not be like them. And then it's okay also to have some boundaries. It's okay to say, hey, excuse me. I mean, I think if it feels right and aligned, but I think we want to be mindful of not letting small things have power over us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We do not want to be small humans. So,
yeah. I remember a friend sharing something with me years ago that stuck with me, and I tend to say it in these situations. Well, that's their sin, not mine. And that always rings true in my head, whatever it is. Like, this is on them. This isn't me. Where it came up one day is we pulled up at a stoplight and there was like a panhandler there. And she went to go give this person money. And I don't remember how it came up because I love to do that too. I had said something maybe like, I don't know, like, oh, they're probably going to use that for whatever. I don't know what I said. It was a long time ago. And she said, well, what I learned from my aunt many years ago is that it's their sin, not mine. I'm just doing my part to help. Right. And so how does that show up? And I've just always adopted that in every situation that I can. And when I'm conscious in it, that's one. The newer one that rings true in my head is Mel Robbins' Let Them. So you're at the concert, you're in the line, you're so hot. And these people just jump right in front of you and let them, and so if you haven't read that book, for those of you listening, definitely a good one. Went and saw Mel Robbins with Ashley on my team to really learn more about that. And it's such a powerful, it takes so much pressure off of our lives when we're like, we are not in control. Let them and move on. Because we could let that person that jumped in line ruin the first hour of the concert we've been waiting to go to for a year.
Right.
It's that true.
So. I think yes. Is it worth your peace? Is it worth your peace? And I think I like the that's there said. I'm a karma girl, so I'm like, how I treat people is my karma. What they do with it is theirs. Mm-hmm. And that's a good own your 50 reminder too. Of like, I cannot control other humans. I cannot control how they think, feel, and respond. I can influence it. I can't control it. And I think that's just a helpful reflection in all relationships.
Yeah, so good. Well, I love this topic. It's great. And any key takeaways or tools that we haven't shared?
I want to just create the reminder that there are some challenging relationships in our lives that require boundaries and space, and a reminder that boundaries are ours to create. If someone is disrespecting our boundaries, it's likely because we're kind of putting them down, right? Like we are disrespecting our own boundaries as well. And so there are times we're going to have to really create boundaries and space and, have some rules at play. But it's so important in the reflection for all of us to try and see the humanity in people. And I feel like the bigger the jerk, the more afraid they are, the less they know their own goodness, the less conscious they are. I really try to have empathy for them, meaning like, oh God, if this is how they treat me or they treat the world, imagine what it feels like to live inside of themselves, because it's true, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. So I think his takeaway is, learning to be empathetic. That does not mean you have to accept the behavior. But I think it means we can not take it personally. We can pray for their happiness. We can send them love, and we can still create space and boundaries. And then lastly, just, a reflection of all things. Nikki, you gave me some really great advice probably 10 years ago. We were sitting on the back patio of your condo in Carmel, and you loved that place. and I was sharing with you some things about Jason and I and just reflecting, and you said, but are you being the kind of spouse for him that you expect him to be for you? And I think that was so helpful. I've never forgotten that. Mm. And I think that's such a good reflection for us to have in friendships. Am I being the friend to them that I expect them to be? Am I communicating in our relationships with family? That's such a good reflection of us being able to take radical ownership.
It's so good. A couple of closing thoughts on my end. One is just remembering not to take ownership of what's not yours to own. I
Mm.
think sometimes we can overstep that and we're trying to fix it, or, just not keep the accountability line or whatever. And it is a fine line. Don't take what's not yours to own, keep that boundary. And then just the reminder that, going back to the story that I told about David and just him being crushed about the 4th of July and how he showed up. When we model the way like that, we are really making such an impact on others. Like, just watching him do what he did, I've thought about it since then in just a couple of situations for me. I want to be more like that. And so when we do our part and, really are radically responsible, we really model the way for others, and that's leadership.
That's so good. Yes, yes, yes. So good to be around people who are like that. So another great conversation. I love these. I will look forward to chatting again next week and having more folks join us. So
yeah, awesome.
Have a good rest
Everybody
of your
have
week.
a great day. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.